Mr. George Bock was born August 15, 1927. He enlisted in the United States Navy at the age of 15. He served in the Philippines and in Japan as a seaman first class. He worked on the submarines and the amphibs, and he also transported people to and from land. He shared his many experiences with us and told us that he decided to join the Navy because of his personal experiences with boats before.
Well, I was used to water. I like to swim, and we had boats and so forth before I went, and I used to ski, and I just kind of liked it, and I liked engines, and I was in the amphibs, so I got to run boats and so forth. I like that.
His first experiences were in boot camp, where he had chiefs that he respected and still remembers today.
And it was in boot camp in Great Lakes. That's where I went through, Great Lakes Naval Training Station. He was the chief, and he knew what he was doing, and he was pretty strict. And of course the other guy, they were both nice guys, don't get me wrong, but I mean, he was just strict, and he wanted you to learn, and that's what you needed to do.
He also served in Hawaii on his way to the Philippines. He experienced many new and surprising things while in the Navy, such as a hospital ship, and visited many new places on his way to the Philippines.
We went by way of Hawaii, and we headed right for the Philippines. And I can remember that one thing that I saw that I wondered, what in the world is this? It looked like a city out in the middle of the ocean, nobody around, but all lit up and everything. And what it was a hospital ship that was taking wounded back. And they're always lit, and they have a big cross on them, and so forth. But I seen that, and being a kid, because I still was only 17 years old. Most of us were. And I seen that, I didn't know what to think. And we went to the Philippines, and we went into Manila first. And we were only in Manila, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, something like that. From there, then after we left Manila, like I say, we were there about 4 days, and I got 1 or 2 liberties there, I think. They only allowed a third of the ship to be off at a time. We had a pretty big crew. And then we went from there through Bataan and Corregidor, and went to Subic Bay, which was our submarine base. And we relieved another submarine tender there that was much older than ours.
Upon entering the Navy, he met many new and interesting people, one of whom was his best friend while serving in the Navy.
Was in the service with 6 guys from Springfield. One was a very close friend, and all of them have passed away now. The last one, passed away just last year, February. He was real close. And we went together through boot camp, and we left overseas together on the same ship. We came back together, and all together. We were together all the time.
While in the Navy, he served on both the amphibs and submarines, tending to many different jobs.
I was actually a boat coxswain. They always said we were attached to the amphibs, even though I was on a submarine tender. But that's what I did, was went to get supplies, but if guys went on liberty and so forth, go pick them up and bring them back, all kinds of boats. Because we had 40-foot motor launch, 50-foot motor launch, 2 of each of those. But we had a captain's gig. I only got to drive that one, but anyway, operate it once for the captain. And then we had a VP and a PP. They're more or less personnel carriers, and both of them were fast.
He made sure to keep in touch with family and friends while overseas, but had to make sure that he didn't give too many details in his letters so that their position wouldn't be given away.
Well, I wrote letters all the time. I kept in contact with them. The only thing of it is you just had to be careful what you said, because they read it anyway. So you could tell, but maybe what area you was in or something, but not too much. You know, they didn't want to give away your position. But I always wrote letters to him.
He was awarded a few medals and certificates for his time in the Navy defending his country.
And I didn't know it until after I got out, because it wasn't on our discharge papers or anything. It wasn't on there, and I didn't know it until I got this little booklet, and it said that we were commended for, well, sinking all these submarines. The whole crew did, our demolition crew and so forth, because we had a demolition crew aboard ship. That's one. And I got one for sharpshooter too, and I didn't know that either. And then I found it out, and they sent me the medal.
Along with the sinking of submarines, he also witnessed the transfer of a wounded man from one ship to another, which he remembers very well.
Really unusual, because we got battle call, battle stations call. And it was like, oh gee, it must have been like 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we're out in the middle of the ocean, nowhere around, and what happened was they were trying to get it to a submarine surface, because they had, one of the guys on there had appendicitis, and he was real bad. When we got that, we found out that we wanted to know what was going on, because, it was dark, and most of us guys had been on duty, and we were asleep. Woke you up in the middle of the night, and we went out there, and they said, well, they had a guy aboard a submarine, and we were going to try to get him aboard so they could operate on him. First, the doctor talked to him, and the pharmacist, and was going to have him to operate on him. But anyhow, the guy, he found out he didn't know what he was doing, really, gosh. And the guy was really in bad shape. So they figured the only thing they could do is try to get him aboard. So they tried to run the submarine up alongside, and they got double doors there where we used to load, torpedoes and all that stuff, and take freight, whatever in. And they tried to get up along the edge of the ship and that, but it's pretty rough. Every time they get close enough that where they thought they could slide him in, the waves flip him out, not flip him out, but flip the ship away from us, the submarine. And it didn't work. They couldn't get him in there. So then they thought they would try the crane, because we had 2 big cranes aft to lift the boats and so forth up. They tried to hook him on, put the basket on there like they always do, for them when they're injured. And they put that basket on there, but it was swinging so bad that there's no way they couldn't. They was afraid that they did get him on there, he'd get to swinging and probably tip. So that didn't work. So what they did then, they decided they wanted volunteers. Nobody volunteered, but they picked some anyway, and they used a 26-foot whaleboat. That's the smaller one, They used that whaleboat, and they put it in the water, but they ran about 10,000 gallons of diesel fuel along the side, which helps quiet the water. It really does. And they got that boat in the water, made it over to the submarine, and got him aboard there, and we got him back and got him in there, and then our doctor operated on him. Then we put him aboard a plane off of one of the cruisers. They had a plane, and they took him back then to Hawaii. There was a case in the Navy where a guy operated, and you may have read about it, some of you, but where he actually operated with a spoon. He actually operated on one of the guys and saved his life, and he sharpened the spoon to operate on him.
Mr. Bock served under many different officers and recalls a couple in particular.
Well, most of the officers were nice. They were fair, and some of them weren't. Some of them were, I don't know, bitter. I think this one guy, as I can recall, he was an officer. He blamed everything on he said, "Where's that blank from?" Is he from West Virginia? He blamed he thought everybody was from West Virginia.
While dealing with his naval officers, he also had to deal with missing his home state of Illinois.
It sure isn't like home, I'll tell you that. I wouldn't trade a square foot of Illinois for all the islands and everything that's over there.
He made it home safe and was very happy to finally be there. He remembers the long trip and the day that he finally reached his hometown again.
Actually, it didn't end until we got into Chicago, but we came to San Diego. And there's where we came into and was mustered out more or less. And then we had to go to Great Lakes, and that's where we were actually signed out, period.
He arrived home again after his two brothers were already there. It was a very happy and long-awaited reunion.
My two brothers were already home. Them and, let's see. Matter of fact, there was 3 other friends of mine that were there that discharged, and a couple of girls that I went to school with. They were there, and of course my mom. I think a couple of my cousins were there too at home, but they didn't come to pick me up.
Mr. Bock also received recognition by the state for his services when he returned home.
I've got a card, and I got a bonus from the state for being in World War II, and it was a little card by Governor Green, and that's where we got our bonus from. All 3 of us did, my brothers and I.
He has a different outlook on the armed forces and wars, both past and present, because of his time in the service.
The one thing that I thought, and I always told everybody, if they fought World War II like they're fighting, like they fight in Iraq and in Afghanistan, with all those contractors over there, subcontractors doing all that work and that, we'd have lost World War II, because we did everything. You know, I mean, they didn't subcontract anything out. If they wanted something built, we built it. And if they wanted a bridge, that's what they did. They built a bridge. And they don't do that kind of stuff anymore. And that's the reason. Wars are always about money. But as you can see, like in Iraq and that and whatever, that was really about money on oil. You know, back then it wasn't so noticeable because, like I said, we didn't have all those subcontracted people working around us all the time. We had guys that did our own. The Seabees did it for the Navy, and the Army had engineers, Army Corps of Engineers. They did all the work. That's the thing that I learned from that.
Serving in the armed forces in any way can change someone's life. This is definitely true for Mr. Bock. His time served has made him the man he is today.
I think it probably gave me a lot more determination to do things. Because after you see things over there, the way they done it and the way things were, it's just altogether different than what it is here. And I didn't want to be like that.
The work ethic he gained in the service helped him later in life when he was working for the government.
I think I've had a pretty good life. I've done a lot of things, and in my job, I had a good job at Alice Chalmers. I went to schools for most of them. I did for the government, and when I went to work for the government, and what I did for the government, I was in apprenticeship. I went through an apprenticeship program at Alice Chalmers, so I knew about apprenticeship. And when I went to work for the federal government, the jobs, and I already knew about them because I knew the guys that were there. And they call it BAT. That's what they called me, was the Batman. Incidentally, I've got a T-shirt that's got a bat on it. As they say, here comes the Batman. And that BAT is Bureau of Apprenticeship and Training, is what it stands for. And with that job, I went to school for it too, somewhat. And matter of fact, I went to Michigan State 3 times, just for jobs. You know, I mean, I didn't graduate from there, don't get me wrong, but I went there for training, and I did in Northern Michigan University. I went there, and I went to Fond du Lac Community College, and I went to Rockford. I went there too. And those 2, matter of fact, there was 3. There was a third one. I went to school for, excuse me, for big machines that I worked on and so forth at Al Chalmers. I mean, big, about like that ship. But for the federal government, I did too. I went to school for at Michigan State there. That's by the Kellogg Center is where I went, in northern Michigan. I went to school there for my job and that. And what I did was I monitored all those programs, and we had to do that all the time to make sure that they followed the guidelines and that the apprentices and that were getting a fair shake of the work and that, because a lot of times they try to play a little favoritism, to some, and if there was any overtime hours or anything, they had to be more or less equal. They tried to keep it as equal as possible, and they had to follow the federal guidelines as far as the program itself is concerned, and if they didn't, you could cancel them out anytime you want. I had a couple of experiences with that, but that was a good job, and it was something that I knew about because I was born and raised in that kind of work, you know what I mean, and went through the apprenticeship program, which I enjoyed very much. I enjoyed that job too, both of them.
George Bock's opportunities and adventures while in the Philippines granted him abilities later on in his life. He learned respect and discipline, not only from officers, but from fellow sailors. It also granted him a new look on how life in war was, helping him understand the hardships that men must go through to achieve victory. Also, with his life and story, it will help more people understand the Herculean tasks of the sailors in both the European and Pacific theaters. We would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. George Bock for his participation in this project. He made a great and noble contribution to our nation's understanding of the war, and his role in it gave us a new outlook on what he and his fellow sailors went through to proceed through World War II. He gave us a glimpse into a world of trial and tragedy that too many people refuse to recognize. In light of this, we would also like to thank Mr. Bock very sincerely for his service to our country as a member of the United States Navy. Without the selfless courage of men such as him to protect our great country, we would be nothing. We want to extend our undying gratitude to all sailors, past and present, for their service to the citizens of the United States of America.